in spite of the fact that I'm going out gigging, I get some amazing feedback. I still struggle sometimes to claim like the label musician, and I definitely have struggled to claim the label songwriter. Almost unknown part of me driving me to do it. There's been a certain amount of struggle with that, but something kept driving me forward, and I was like, no, I want to express myself through my songs and my writing.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Tamsin. Could you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, thank you for having me, Rosie. It's really good to see you. So my name's Tamsin, and I have been making music for probably around 20 years or so. And throughout that time, I've been in different bands and done different projects with people. And yeah, so I more recently decided that I really wanted to focus on my own creative output, and I wanted to do that via my solo project called VICE VERA, which is guitar and voice with lots of effects and loop pedals. And so that's what I'm concentrating on at the moment.
And I love your story of starting off in bands, like starting off in these groups and sort of cutting your musical teeth with all these other people and that experience. And now you, as you say, you've moved on into your own solo projects. When I meet songwriters, I think the majority of us, and I could be wrong, but we tend to be kind of like these lone wolves and we're just
Yeah.
like quite alone a lot. And one of the issues I see that songwriters have is how do I get a band? But you've kind of went the opposite way. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey and maybe the reasons why you chose to leave?
First off, I studied at Salford University, so I was on a pop music and recording course there, and that was kind of my first experience. We had to be in bands during that time. That was part of the performance requirement. So I met a really good friend there, Helen, who was a drummer, incredible drummer, and we ended up forming a band straight out of uni together. And at that time, I was very shy, very unconfident, and but working with her was just great because she believed in me even when I didn't. And so yeah, it sort of went from there really, and it was always just people that I knew. Like I had a boyfriend that was doing a project, and I wanted to go on tour with that band, so I ended up in that band for a bit. And then someone else needed a guitar player for something, and I just ended up offering to do that or some backing vocals here. So it was all through like a network. So it was a great sort of music scene in Salford and Manchester where I was living, well, I'm still living. And so it was through knowing people and being out in the world, really. So even though I agree with what you have said about being a bit of a bit of a lone wolf in some ways, I'm quite shy, really, but I just happened to find myself in this scene where there was a lot going on and just somebody needed something at any given time. And so that's how I ended up doing that. My writing role has varied depending on the band. And so some of the bands I had a writing contribution and some I didn't. But what I realized was I really wanted to express my own creative ideas and I did want to write. So yeah, in 2019, I found myself in a situation where I was in quite a few different bands and I wasn't finding time to write for myself and my own project. So I sort of stripped them away until I just had Vice Vera left.
And was there a point that you can remember where I'm a songwriter, I am an artist, I need to express myself? Was there one point, or is that something that you're still working on? Like, where are you in that space of the identity of a songwriter?
There definitely was not one point. And I think with any of these things, so songwriter, musician, artist, creative, any of these labels that we think of when we think of those types of people, I think it can be really hard to claim as your own. So quite often, in spite of the fact that I'm going out gigging a fair amount, I get some amazing feedback. I still struggle sometimes to claim like the label musician, for example, and I definitely have struggled to claim the label songwriter, if we want to talk about labels. So there was never one moment. I think there was just like almost unknown part of me driving me to do it. And there's been a certain amount of struggle with that. But something kept driving me forward. And I was like, no, I want to express myself through my songs and my writing. It's just been a series of like little steps just pushing me in that direction until I found
Yeah.
myself where I am now.
It's an emotional experience. It's an urge. It's a necessity. Like, it's my music. Like, I need to get something of mine out. And even
Yeah.
though I'm in these bands, I'm in these other projects, I'm doing this stuff, it's not scratching that itch though.
Yes, that's true. It scratches a different itch. So
Mm.
for me, I love live performance. And what those bands gave me the opportunity to do was to do some amazing gigs and go to some amazing places. So that was great. But you're right, it didn't touch that other bit where I was like, I want to be putting forth my, like bringing something forth for myself, or like also processing something for myself, something emotional of my own.
And is that a big part of your artistry, like needing to really process your own experiences, your own feelings in your music? Maybe you could give us a little idea of that creative process that you have as a songwriter.
It's taken me many, many years to really understand that there is some processing that happens through songwriting. I was always approaching it sort of from the other end of, I want to stand on a stage and I want to have some songs to play and I want to have written them. It was more like that way round. I wanted to be performing because that's what I love. I love the catharsis of live performance. Um, so I was sort of approaching it from that way. And then what I've found is what comes out through the songwriting process, it's not a conscious processing in the moment. Quite often I'll find the meaning later on, or I'll write something will come out writing wise. I'm like, oh my God, I thought it was
Yes.
about this one thing, and that actually it was about something totally different, or something the personal is overlaid onto the story in some way. So I kind of now know that yes, I'm processing something, and it's really an important part of being a human. But yeah, it's taken a long time for that to come into conscious awareness.
Mm.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's amazing, that experience, isn't it? Of, I've written this and I thought that I kind of knew what I was writing about. And then boom, it hits you. And it's almost like there's this subconscious part of ourselves that comes out when we're making music and when we're writing songs that we still need to even face. You know, like we
Yeah.
we don't even fully truly know what's going on. I think that's really cool.
I'm sure it's probably the same for you, but when you start just noodling away, maybe you're sort of writing some lyrics to music, but you're just spitballing and you kind of, or maybe not even real words, and then eventually they sort of form themselves into words, and then you're like, oh, I'm singing about that thing that's unconsciously on in the back of my mind.
I kind of see it like they're under all these layers, and when we sit down to write the song, we're just peeling away, you know, that's the next kind of bit of improv, another bit of improv. Oh, I've got an idea for a lyric, and then boom, we've got to some kind of chord message.
I love that bubbling up through the surface. And it's
Mm.
happened to me actually when I've written, there was a prompt that you gave during one of your workshops that I was doing. And it was about writing a letter to, I think, the first man on the moon. I
Yeah.
think that's, or was it Buzz Aldrin? Anyway, we were writing a letter to someone who'd been to the moon. And I did that exercise and I loved it. Um, I think because what I loved about it was it brought me out of myself, that feeling that you constantly, if you know you're trying to process stuff, or you feel like you've got to write from like your deepest experience, your internal world. And that was a great exercise in actually writing from another point of view, and more of a storytelling
Mhm.
kind of way of writing, which is not something that I might normally gravitate towards. So it was really good for me. And also then once I'd finished it and I heard it later down the line, I was like,
Oh,
okay, this is absolutely about this other situation, and like it's coming out through the mechanism of the storytelling. So that was amazing
yeah.
for me. It was revelatory. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I think that was authentic songwriting, right? That you were in. Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think it was a couple of years ago now.
Inside that particular workshop, and I'm so happy that you've brought up that experience. Authentic songwriting, I mean, it's neat. It kind of does what it says on the tin. It's about you writing songs that feel like you, that feel true to you, that feel like represent you. Those are really big concepts. I'm going to write a song that feels like me. Like, well, who am
Yeah.
I? You know? And so quite often I think when we're trying to approach our work, I'm like, okay, this needs to be genuine and honest and real. We can actually get really stuck in our tracks because of the gravity of that. It's songwriting without any sort of pretense towards an end result. It's just, I'm doing this exercise to get to a song, as opposed to I'm writing a song because I want to get a #1 hit, or I'm writing a song because I want Spotify streams. That shit's hard because it lacks that authenticity.
Songwriting is something which you will know because we've talked about it a lot, that I has been a struggle, like an emotional struggle. And that's to do with, my internal processes and how I am in the world. But as I say, there's always been this thing that's driving me. I want to do it. How can I overcome these barriers? And I don't think I found the perfect routine, as it were. I like to, try out different things and like, oh, maybe I can circumnavigate my internal demons, or for want of a better word, the critic, let's be honest, by trying this way, that way, the other way. And there is no perfect way. That's what I found out. But in terms of actual process when it comes to songwriting, yeah, it definitely varies. I think some days doing some free writing might be the little key to let me through the door. And other days, one of the main things actually that I find really helpful is there's kind of writing, like poetry kind of sense, or trying to put lyrics together on paper. But what I actually personally find more useful is to be in a practice room with my gear set up so I can make a loud noise, because ultimately, as I've already said, I really thrive off live performance. And so then to have the setup that I'm going to replicate when I'm playing live is really helpful. And much of the expression comes from those sounds, and the guitar sounds, or the way that you can ride a microphone with your voice in a particular way. So for me, that really helps my creativity, is being in that practice room. Maybe one day I will find my routine, but at the moment it's, do the things that help me get around the inner critic that might be really loud one day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I suppose the point of a routine is to minimize resistance, or minimize the friction between living our lives out here as civilians and then doing the songwriter thing.
I love that. Civilians.
Civilians.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not to sound like elitist, but if you're not a songwriter, you're just a civvy. Anyway, so it's good that this is a podcast for songwriters and no one's going to listen who isn't a songwriter. So join the club. Sounds like for you, what gets you in there, it's setting up an environment versus a routine. And that seems to be what works for you.
For sure. That definitely helps. I think also leaving my own house and going to the practice room is really important. Like that separation, that journey of leaving my house. I'll do singing warm-ups on the way quite often in the car, arriving at the practice room. So that kind of is a routine in the sense of it's ritualistic. It's just like, right, I'm getting in my car, I'm going to this other place, I'm warming my voice up on the way. Environment, maybe, for me at the moment, over routine.
There is a kind of routine in there, embedded. Yes. I do think we live in this weird era where routines and morning routines, nighttime routines, daytime routines, skincare routines, well, it's just like, fuck off, It's just, do you know what I mean? It's almost like the routine itself has this huge value, and it makes you some kind of better person. People that have these elaborate morning, nighttime routines, and it's stressful for them to do them. I think that's the antithesis of the routine. My nighttime routine is so that I can sleep. You found something that works for you, and I say this to any songwriter that I work with. If you find that thing that works for you, like lean in, just keep leaning into it, And your music, I can hear that in your music, which, by the way, we're going to play a song at the end of this episode. So make sure you continue to listen, everybody. And also, Tamsin, just to let you know, you need to send me a song. But I can hear that in your music. I can hear that liveness. I can hear that rehearsal room vibe. I can hear that life inside your songs. Needs that space.
It has been really interesting for me to do some of my songwriting at home, and to use an acoustic guitar, because the things that come out are quite different. And Um, obviously, I'm sort of in the middle of doing Radical Songwriting Academy with you, but and so then by necessity, some of that has been at home. I really like this image of like the songs are in a little queue inside you, and you need to let out the song that is at the front of the queue. And so maybe that day, the song at the front of the queue is like a really like gentle, acousticy kind of song. And I used to dismiss those ideas because they didn't fit with my idea of, my narrative of what Vice Vera, which is my project, what that was. So I'd be like, that's not useful to me. But it absolutely has been useful to me. It's not only been useful in the sense of just creatively expressing myself in a different way, it's also useful sometimes it has been useful for me to expand my idea of what Vice Vera is and what can fit within that container. It's not useless just because I might not use it for Vice Vera. It's still a song that's in the world
Exactly.
or in the ether somewhere, even if no one hears
You
it.
have to submit sometimes to what's coming up and just be like, this is part of me too.
As you say, submission or letting go as opposed to resistance. And I think for me, there's been so much resistance, like internal resistance around songwriting, amongst other things. And it's kind of freeing when I can catch myself in the moment where it's just like, okay, this is what's coming today, and there's no urgency about it. I think that's what it is. It's
Mm.
the putting down of the urgency, which I think culturally is embedded, this sense of urgency, but also if you feel like you're behind in some way, which is a feeling I often have, it's coming from an urgent place. It's like, I have to have written 10 songs by yesterday, and they all have to be brilliant, and they all have to fit in this particular brand or narrative. Um, so yeah, there's something really beautiful about just relaxing into, I'm just writing a song.
So I know from working with you, I've worked with you for quite a while actually now, we've known each other for
Yeah.
we've never met in person. You came out of Radical Songwriting Academy and we've been working one-to-one now for quite a wee while. And in that time, you've released a single and I know you're working on lots and lots and lots of new music. So can you just tell us a little bit about where you are right now in your songwriting journey and your career and what's coming up for you in the kind of like near to mid future?
Radical Songwriting Academy, as you know. And that's been great for me because it's has helped kickstart some writing for me. I've got a couple of songs that I'm really happy with out of that, and hope to have a couple more. However, I'm actually in the middle of doing a project where I'm looking at some other aspects of live performance. So this isn't directly related to songwriting, it's more to do with being a performer, I guess. So I've got some funding from the Arts Council. So I'm just in the middle of a 6-month period called Develop Your Creative Practice. Well, the fund is called that. And part of that is to look at using sound responsive lighting for stage wear and sound responsive video. So as you say, I released a single in April, and that it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get that over the line for a number of reasons. And I'm really, really proud of that it's out in the world. I've got another track that's already recorded that I hope to release later in the year. And I actually have enough material really to put together an album. In terms of songwriting, I've touched on it already, but I love the idea that more elements are coming into my songwriting. There's more expansiveness and there's more willingness to move away from a certain sound, and to include things that I might not have included in the past. So that feels like an evolution and a very welcome one. Within the still being me and still being vice vera, like explore the range of what that can mean, the multitude of different avenues that could go down. It's about not trying to fit yourself in a really small box and be like, I have to be this one static thing. No, I
Mm.
don't. We're all many, many things in any one moment, let alone across the course of a week, month, a year.
What are we about to hear? And
Mhm.
where can we find you on the internet to
Okay.
listen to more stuff and see what you're up to and kind of keep in touch with you?
So this is a song Tourist that you're going to hear now, and it was the single that I released in April, with lots of Rosie support. Thank you, Rosie. And it's a studio recording. So I think it still retains some of that urgency and live energy. However, it's got some different elements that maybe yeah, wouldn't happen live. So it's got some percussion. But I'm really proud of it. And there's a video that accompanies it that took many, 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 many months of work to make. And you can actually see that over on YouTube. Stay in touch or follow me on any social media. I predominantly work on Instagram. I'm on Bandcamp and Spotify. There's only one single out in the world at the moment, but there will be more to come. So keep an eye out.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tamsin. Thank you for joining us.
It's
See
been a
you
really
soon.
great conversation.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Bye.
Tourist, you're a tourist. Tourist, you're a tourist. Tourist, you're a tourist when the music doesn't matter. Tourist, you're a tourist when you're biding your time. Tourist, you're a tourist when the music doesn't matter and you're biding your time and you're waiting for it all to arrive. Tourist, you're a tourist when the music